Today, we are reviewing the all-new 2025 BMW S1000Rr. Hate it or love it, the S1000Rr has been on top literally since its inception and when it hit the States. Basically, after the original first-gen S1000 came out, they raised the bar so high that every motorcycle manufacturer basically had to keep up. So this here is their latest iteration of the bike. It's not a revolutionary, from the ground up, all new bike, but it is an evolution of what was already amazing and one of the best bikes on the market. So I've been blessed enough to ride a lot of super cool bikes. You guys have probably seen my 2025 Panigale V4 video, all kinds of nice super bikes, but I wanna see how this 2025 BMW S1000 stacks up as an everyday bike up against those other motorcycles. Do me a favor, please stick around in the video. It's not all gonna be POV ride on the bike. We'll come back to the shop and we'll talk about it a little bit more, but stay to the end of the video because I have a super special announcement. You guys are not gonna wanna miss it. Let's jump on it and see just how good or bad this thing really is. All right, so this is the 2025 BMW S1000Rr. This is probably, since my Panigale video came out, the #1 requested review bike. The Panigale video that I put out, it did do very well. I'm not a journalist. I don't review motorcycles for a living, but coming from a racer perspective and somebody that uses a bike as it should, I like to give you guys my honest everyday rider review. Like, would you want to own this bike as a commuter? Would you want to own these bikes as your day-to-day daily rider? I'm going to let you know not just my take on the new S1000Rr, but also if you should buy it over a 2025 Panigale V4 or whatever other cup of tea that you're looking at. So I can tell you just from the rip, if you're not familiar with the K67 or the 2020 Plus BMW S1000Rr, sorry, 2019 in Europe, but 2020 here in the States, if you're not familiar with that bike, that is a complete game changer as far as a fully brand new from the ground up S1000Rr. The bike is absolutely amazing. Hold up. Oh, yeah. I'm telling you, on a leader bike, that never gets old, especially a modern day super bike. All these bikes have roughly 200 horsepower these days, and this thing just gives you the fix as you would expect. Now, first and foremost, I want to say before we get into this video, I am not the biggest S1000Rr fan. I know, go ahead, roast me in the comments. There is a cult-like following over these bikes, and it's a really great bike. I don't want to take anything from it. Like, shout out to BMW. You guys did an awesome freaking job making this carrot that every manufacturer has had to chase since 2009 this freaking good. But now, that being said, I'm not here to give you my quirks and features or the things that I don't like about this bike. I'm here to let you know, is the new 2025 S1000Rr a certified daily driver? So I want to go ahead and get this out of the way. The reason that I don't like the BMW, and probably the only reason, is it's a boring bike. That being said, that doesn't just go for the S1000. In my opinion, that goes for almost any inline 4-cylinder. If you guys didn't know this, I actually owned a Honda CBR RRR, the pirate bike. Man, I sunk a lot of money into that, and I just couldn't get over the fact that it was boring. It sounded like a ZX-10. No offense, ZX-10 people. But I'm just saying, this $30,000 motorcycle sounds exactly the same way as a $6,000 used Gixxer 1000. Now, I know there's differences, of course, but my point is, it's an inline 4 configuration, and there's just nothing special about it. I do think that BMW has done the absolute best job, hands down, of building an inline 4 motorcycle. Better than Suzuki, better than the RRR, better than any other configuration, with the exception of the CP4 from Yamaha. That R1 motor, although makes about 10 less horsepower than this to the wheel, it might not have the top end stonk that the S1000 has. In my opinion, the R1 is the best all-around inline 4 motorcycle because you get all the great things of an inline 4, but it sounds exotic too, like an RSV4. Nonetheless, this is not an R1 pro versus con. This is the 2025 S1000Rr. And where we're headed is I'm basically going to my local back roads here in Mexico. And I just want to see how this thing feels from, let's say, a faster rider perspective. I'm not the fastest guy in the world, I'll go ahead and tell you that, but I've got thousands of hours at the track, so I at least know how to get 10/10ths out of a motorcycle. We're not going to try to get that on the street. I like 8/10ths as like max riding on the street, you know. I got a wife and kids, I got to go home to them. But right now, we're basically doing the commute of third gear, 40 miles an hour, and I'm sorry guys, but it's very boring. It's exactly as you would expect for a 200 horsepower leader bike. You know, you got power on tap, it'll take off in third gear. Now this is a stock bike with just shy over 600 miles on it, so it has had its first service and had all the nannies and everything unlocked from the factory. And the only other thing that's done to this bike is we switched it to GP shift. But this has the stock Acura that you can get from the factory. It has every stock part, including the stock fender. So this bike, in no way, shape, or form, is anything special and more than your everyday out-of-the-box S1000Rr. Now, I am riding in Race Pro 1. I have the DTC down to 1, which is the least intrusive traction control setting. I don't recommend to do that if you haven't had a lot of time on a modern day superbike, but that's how I like to ride them. I like to feel it and kind of, you know, gauge what I like. Now also, because of course all the new bikes have these badass dashes, you have, if you're not familiar, this is like the normal S1000, basically how it's been for the last 4 or 5 years. But I do like this race dash. Looks good, but I know what you guys want to see. How does this bike really feel? Well, I'm going to show you. First off, I'm sure you've heard this gripe a million times, but here we are again. The S1000Rr, especially, you know, these newer ones, they're so restricted from the factory that I don't know if you've seen that, but second gear, I was wide open. Watch this. Look, I'm in fourth, go down to second. Watch this. Handful of throttle. The bike is going nowhere and then takes off. Man. Now, what's awesome is just with a flash and tune, that'll be gone and your bike will make something crazy like 30 more wheel power. But let's see how it corners. I will tell you what though, as soon as you get out of that little dead spot, it definitely awakens it. It livens right up. And it feels like one of the fastest super bikes made. Basically what you would expect with a $30,000 bike. And a little bump. And down to third. And catch a little wide, tuck it back in. And see, I'm on the throttle fully right there, guys. And I would literally be wheeling on any tune flash bike. Alright, let's come down in here. Gotta be careful, there's a little bit of dirt here. And then we got a nice little slow corner. I'll keep it in third. Like I say, it's not my bike. Alright, we'll run it out a little wide. Hard on the brakes. Tip her in. Oh, beautiful. You can hear how quick I am back on the throttle. And it takes a minute. So, you know, just a little through the gears, flicking it around, and I'll tell you right now, I've already felt what I've needed to feel to compare this to other motorcycles. If you are watching this video because you want to know solely how this bike stacks up against the 2025 Panigale V4. Oh, I'm sorry, Beamer fans, but the Panigale just does it. Now, in terms of looks, I think this is the best looking S1000 ever made. Hands down. I love the chunky winglets. I love how the bodywork looks. Honestly, they got it right when they went to the symmetrical design in 2019, 2020 over the third gen that was like the, you know, the Forrest Whitaker. I think this bike looks absolutely amazing, but I do think the Panigale looks better. Back down into third, see if she has enough grunt. Oh yeah. Beautiful tip-in though. The bike's chassis is amazing. You can really feel everything. It does show its weight compared to like race bikes and lighter bikes in the category, but through and through, I don't think anybody would be upset about buying this bike. Come on, baby. Come on, baby. There you go. All right. You know, getting a little bit comfortable with that dead spot. And you just ride it like a 400 and you're basically full penned at the apex, and thank God it doesn't high side you to the moon. This versus the 25 Panigale V4. I don't care if it's an S model, base model, M model. I'm just talking bike to bike. How do they stack up? When it comes to looks, it's going to come down to your preference. My preference is the Panigale V4. Like I say, this bike looks gorgeous, but I just think the Panigale looks that much better and more exotic for the price tag. Second, oh, look at these cool trucks here, guys. That's so cool. Wicked. Second, when it comes to power delivery, I want you guys to mark these words. It doesn't matter what bike you pick. If it's made after 2015, you literally need a flash and tune. At least a flash that unlocks everything and takes the nannies off the bike so you could even use the whole bike. So that's first and foremost. I want to go ahead and put that little caveat because it doesn't matter what bike you choose, it needs to be unlocked before you could even play apples to apples. So that being said, I would say that the Panigale from the factory is hands down the better bike because although not unlocked, the Panigale is it's something about like Ducati, Aprilia, even KTM. They don't restrict their bikes as much as everybody else when it comes to their ride-by-wire. It's like you might not get 100% of the throttle, but you get a decent amount that you can get your fix and you can get really, really hurt with, right? Like on any of these bikes. But I've got to say the BMW, in my opinion, suffers the most. This is hands down one of the worst maps or stock tune, whatever you want to call it. This is one of the worst ones I've ever felt on a motorcycle. Not just a modern day motorcycle, but I have felt 1976 RD350s with a misfire that feel better and more controlled and confidence inspiring than this throttle. We're in fourth gear. It moves. Now if I were to go down to second, let's get out of this turn a little bit, but watch. A little bit of straightaway, full blast. Full blast. Nothing. And it's like, in my opinion, I know they did it for regulation and for EPA and all that stuff to make the bike better for Euro 5 compliance, but in my opinion, if you are a newer rider and you're not used to that BS, That's going to get you in a lot more trouble than if you gave a new rider 200 horsepower, but their hand was directed to the throttle, right? If they were in charge, I think they would have a better chance than thinking they are, and then you take everything away from them, and then you give it like a CR 500 two-stroke, and it just comes on like a hurricane. Like, I don't know how that makes sense as far as stock mapping, but let's quit talking about that, because we're going to go ahead and fix that in the next episode. Now let's talk about comfort. Seating wise, where my butt is sitting is more comfortable in my opinion on the S1000Rr. But that being said, bar position and clip-on angle, the S1, I can't even believe I'm going to say this, guys. The S1000 feels more racy than the Panigale V4. Like, my hands are here on this, and on the Panigale, they're like this. Like, they're a lot more straight. So that, to me, like, instantly makes the Panigale a better daily rider, a better everyday bike, because you're not as cramped. This is like your typical full racing position on any superbike, and the Panigale, what impressed me about that is it's not. It looks like that, but then when you sit on it, you're like, wow, this is like a Street Fighter with clip-ons. It feels amazing. Now, we'll give a point to the BMW for heat, because there's absolutely none on this bike. So I've got to say that, in my opinion, they are neck and neck. So let's get back to the shop and let's discuss more. All right, so that was the first ride of the 2025 S1000Rr. It's an absolute amazing bike. I really love the bike. Like I spoke about, I love the looks of the bike. I would definitely, like, if I'm spending my hard-earned money, I'm gonna buy the Panigale V4 over the S1000. Don't let that influence your decision. Just based off of my riding style and what I prefer to get out of a bike, I would choose the Panigale. This S1000 is a really great bike for somebody that's looking for maybe the all-around perfect motorcycle. It doesn't do anything wrong. I'm sure you've seen review videos of the S1000s in the past. They really don't do anything wrong, but at the same time, as a motorcycle rider, you have certain itches you want scratched. As a motorcycle owner, you have certain itches you want scratched. Those being the styling, the exotic factor. When you're out at the gas station and you go in to grab a Red Bull and then you come back out, you want people surrounding your bike because it is the sickest thing since sliced bread. Unfortunately, the S1000 will only get you so far. People that know motorcycles, they're gonna know, damn, that's the new 2025 S1000Rr. The unfortunate truth is people that don't know motorcycles, they're just gonna know it's an S1000Rr. They don't know what year it could be. So based on the exotic factor, I still would go for the Panigale because it doesn't matter. Anywhere you go, that bike breaks necks. Not just that, but once you put an exhaust on an S1000 and you put an exhaust on a Panigale V4 or any non-inline 4 with the exception of the R1 for that matter, it just wakes the bike up, but it sounds so much better. Now, tomato, tomato, some people like the inline 4. Like I say, these are my opinions. Please don't take them as gospel and go buy one or the other because I told you or told you not to. This is just us chatting, and I'm just letting you know how I feel about the bike. Now, one thing I will say, if you're not familiar with the S1000, it's kind of always been known for like vibey bars. You know, like you'll feel vibration in the front end through the handlebars. And I've got to say that they have fixed it on this motorcycle. I felt it a little bit on the previous generation, the 20 to 24 models. I don't know if they've softened up like the suspension coating, you know, how it adjusts on the fly on the electronic suspension or what, but the bike does feel a lot smoother. Now also, while riding it, I may have said that this was the worst bike out of the factory with a stock tune, stock map on it. And I do have to say, I apologize, I disagree. The Honda CBR 1000 RRR bike is definitely, by far, the worst stock map of any motorcycle ever made. Go ahead, I'm sorry Honda, I love the bikes you make, but your bike sucks stock before it's flashed and tuned. That bike, like second gear, I would literally be like this, waiting, to the point to where like on corner exit and coming out of the apex, I almost wanted to shift down another gear. It was taking that long. So I will say the S1000 isn't that bad. And as you've seen in the higher gears, it gives you most of the power. It only limits them in the lower gears like first, second, and third. That being said, on comfort and aesthetics,
power-wise. This is a very hard topic to just like say one or the other is better, because let's be honest, we're mere mortals. We're not Valentino Rossi or Marc Marquez. We're not gonna get everything out of these bikes that they were meant to do. That's why I'm doing this Everyday Rider series, because it's more or less the people that don't know anything and have a racing or track riding background. It's more or less the bike you'd buy to do everything. You're gonna ride it on the street. You're gonna take it to the track. Maybe you won't, but you'll definitely ride it on the street, and you're definitely gonna use it more than if it's just a pretty princess queen sitting in the corner of the garage. When it comes down to power, all these bikes make 200 horsepower, if not stock, with a flash and tune. 200 wheel horsepower, more than any of us mere mortals will ever be able to use, let alone on the street. That being said, pick which one works best for you. If you're not familiar, an inline 4 basically makes all of its power at the top of the rev range. So if, let's say it revs to 14,000 RPM, usually it's making like, oh my God, my arms are getting ripped out kind of power, 8,000, 9,000 and over. And then it climbs to red line, you catch your shift, and luckily you're already in the power band for the next gear. Awesome for the track, but for the street, unfortunately, even if it's flashed in tune, a lot of times on inline 4s, you really just have to be in the meat and potatoes to get the most out of that engine. That's what you bought a superbike for, right? With the Panigale, as well as some other models, let's say the Super Duke being a V-twin, the RSV4 being a V4, the R1 that has a cross-plane inline 4, which means instead of how the pistons go up and down and it fires 1, 2, 3, 4, it actually fires 1, 3, 2, 4. So it's almost like a dual bank firing order like you would get on a twin, even though the configuration is an inline 4. Bikes like that usually and typically make a lot more torque down low than just that up top power number. So you'll hear me speak a lot of times about, yeah, the S1000 is a stonker up top, makes 200 horsepower, but the reason I would take 180 horsepower R1 over this bike is because not just more torque as in the number that it puts up on a dyno chart, but the rideability and the feel on corner exit, or say you're doing 6th gear on a 45-mile-an-hour highway, you just wanna roll on the throttle and get out of your own way, right? You don't wanna downshift a bunch. You wanna just go ahead and move. That's why you bought a 200 horsepower superbike, right? Those bikes do it better. They're better for around town. They're better for just your everyday rideability. And even like the smaller bikes, like an R7, an RS660, I'm just saying hypothetically, those smaller power bikes, like an R7 makes almost as much torque as like a middleweight 600, right? So it may only make 80 horsepower compared to 120, but if it makes 45, 50 pound-feet of torque, the same thing as the 600, it's gonna feel a little better out of the hole, not as much as a slouch and having to wring its neck being in the throttle. Performance-wise, like I say, whatever your preference is, if you're somebody that does highway pulls, it doesn't matter how much low-end power or torque it really makes. You're trying to tune your bike and ride your bike at that certain RPM limit, and this is null and void for you. As far as the everyday bike, and in my opinion, the best super bike for the street for 2025, I would have to say is the all-new Panigale V4. Doesn't matter if you buy an S model or the base model, it's an absolute amazing motorcycle. I can't even believe I can say this about Ducati now, but if not better, it is at least in the class of smoothness and refinement that these bikes have always shined with. The Panigale V4 now does that just as good, if not better. And this is what's crazy to me. But if you're buying an everyday superbike based on comfort, the Panigale V4 is a more comfortable bike, in my opinion. I like more spread out bars instead of the close cramping, wrist position of like racer style bars, which is crazy because the previous generations, not just one, but literally every Ducati and Panigale up until the 2025 has been that racy bar position where your wrist would go numb after 15, 20 minutes of riding. Now, it doesn't do it on the S1000. It's not that bad, but the Panigale is just better. It's a better riding position for me. Now, if you ask my wife, I'm 5'12" on a good day, I'm 230 pounds. I fit well on both bikes, but I would just say, down to personal preference, the Panigale feels a little bit better to me. Weight-wise, the BMW weighs and the Panigale weighs, I don't care how close or far away those numbers are, as far as feeling when you're riding the bike, the Panigale feels light years lighter than the S1000. It is crazy that bikes within a couple pounds of each other aren't even in the same category. Like the S1000 feels like a boat compared to a Panigale V4. On top of that, where the placement of the weight is, meaning that here up is most of your weight. The tail's super light. Down here, there's really not much. Once we do an exhaust on it, it's super light. But like the weight and center of gravity is basically like right here. So you feel that in the transitionings of the turns. So basically, if you're leaning this bike from one side and you want to flip it over to the other side, you actually feel that weight and pretty much like a hang time, right? A total time that it takes for it to make it to the other side. Personally, I feel that and I'm almost like, here we go, wait for it, and then it falls in and it grips and we're good to go. With the Panigale, it's literally point and shoot. Wherever you want to go, you just manhandle that bike, you're already at the apex and you're on it. You don't have to wait for the bike to settle. At least that's my opinion and that's what it feels like to me. When it comes to electronics, I mean, both bikes are pretty much built to the hilt. Everything you could want, your traction controls, your slide controls, your wheelie controls, beautiful dashes on both the Panigale and the S1000. I do think the S1000, you know, with the cruise control and things like that, it does make it a better bike, but like, let's be honest, if you're buying a $30,000 super bike as your everyday street bike, there's definitely gonna be some, not flaws, but gripes that you're gonna live with being a race bike for the street. Let's be honest. You know, if you want a really fast street bike that will probably blow the doors off of this in the hands of the right guy, then buy a Super Duke. They're really comfortable. I may be a little biased to KTM, but buy a Super Duke if you want the best street bike. I'm pretty sure we've covered everything that you guys might ask or want to know about these bikes going head to head and just how they stack up. But I do have like a really special announcement. So one of my oldest friends, he's literally been a friend of mine for the last decade. Some of my earlier videos when I had the RSV4, he was actually the guy that had the R1 and we were riding all the time together. Like, he's one of my best friends. He's such an amazing person and hopefully, Brandon, I hope you're not watching this video at least till episode 2 comes out, but we are surprising you with pretty much a full stage 1 build, buddy. So in next episode, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna flash, we're gonna tune this bike, we're gonna put a full titanium system exhaust on this, pretty much everything you'd wanna do to unlock the bike and just make it a 200 horsepower stonker. So next episode, we're gonna surprise Brandon. For those of you who don't know Brandon, Brandon's into bikes just like we are, and unfortunately about 5-6 years ago, Brandon almost lost his life. I was up in Atlanta for work, and Brandon moved there from Florida and we just happened to be there. We were gonna go out to dinner together. So as soon as he got off work, he was gonna come meet me and my wife and kids. And unfortunately, a semi truck pulled out in front of him on his brand new R1 and destroyed the bike, completely totaled. But I'll never forget, I went to the Atlanta hospital and basically this is like 30-40 minutes after he was there. He was already through like 1 or 2 surgeries just to keep him alive. Like, this guy should have never walked again, let alone lived again, let alone rode again. So this is actually Brandon's 2025 S1000Rr, and he was like, hey Jay, why don't you film a review video on the channel and see how it stacks up against the Panigale V4? And I said, okay, that's a great idea. How long do I have it for? And he said 1 week. So we have parts already here. We've got the tuner from BT Moto. We have the full titanium exhaust from JC Handmade. If you don't know who that is, just stay tuned because that exhaust is beautiful. That's the same exhaust that we run on the Super Duke, but Brandon has no clue that we are gonna surprise him with his dream spec S1000Rr. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this content, give it a like. Leave a comment down below on what bike you guys want to see next. Subscribe to stick around to see more of the content that we do here, and we'll see you on the next one.